So, hey guys, hey, this is Robert Smith, and I am here with my friend Tammy Magnuson, and we have a discussion going on. We're talking about who are you really? Who are you really? So, a lot of people have been searching. This one friend of mine, he spent a lot of money, sold his stuff. He went to some high mountain where the monks are, and he's trying to find himself. Who is he really? And I said, I know who you are. You're you. So who are you really, right? And what do you think, Tammy?
Well, I happen to think that you are a divine creation and have been breathed life into you, and that from this creation, you're living inside of a body, experiencing things, and that the subconscious is paying attention and deciding, what do I need to hold on to so that I can reproduce it and live within this world in a successful way.
Well, here's how I see it. And again, let's talk about the brain, how the brain works. First of all, who are you really? Of course, a lot of people, they're miserable, they're upset, they feel like they're a loser, their life sucks, they're depressed, they're angry, they've been abused, they've been cheated, they've been lied to, they've been all kinds of stuff. And of course, they're walking around miserable and depressed, and they go, well, who am I? And of course, there's a lot of weird teachings out there. And so some of these teachings, it's really misleading. It really is misleading because these teachings have an angle, bad versus good, evil versus good. If you're creating something that's depression, it's bad. Or if you're angry, it's bad. Or if you feel like a loser, it's bad. And let's be honest with you, who are you really? That's the $1 million question, right? So you said what? What did you say? Who are you really?
Well,
now again,
the divine creative force, the breath, the life, spirit is what most people refer to it as, living in a flesh. Mm-hmm.
Right, so why don't you go back to that other theory we was talking about earlier?
Which was, the electrical. Well, that's yeah. So the way I see it is like the spirit has this electrical cord to the creative power, the creator, and life and experiences end up corroding that or constricting it so that we don't know. We end up not knowing who we are because we're just looking backwards and seeing our experiences and viewing life through that rather than who are designed to be.
Right. So this is how I see it. As we are born into this world, we're a product of a really big swim, and swimming to the egg. Hundreds of thousands of millions of sperms racing to this egg. And of course, 9 months later, you're born. The point that I want to make is there's a life force called survival. The one who won the race is the one who survived. The others did not. Right now, you're born into this world. Now, how I see who are you really? You are a creator. You're a manifestor and a producer. You're a survivor. That's all you are. All right. So again, we got Tammy, we got me, and we got John or Jill. Each of these 4 people were born in different environments. I mean, I don't know your life story, so I'm going to make up yours. Tammy was born in a family dynamics where everybody's pissed off and angry. Mom's angry, dad's angry and pissed off, and they beat each other up and they fight. Now, this little part of us, that survival creative force, is going to take this in and put right on top of the survival force. So the survival force says, I'm going to stay alive. And how I'm going to stay alive is I'm learning how the world is. And this world's going to teach me how to survive in this world. Now, we got John. Now, John, he's come from a different world. He comes from a world whose family are loving and kind and supportive. And they say nice things to him. And they encourage him. But he goes to school. John's a single child. He goes to school and kids pick on him. Now, this little survival force has mom and dad they love and think he's special, but then he goes to school and school introduce a new lifestyle to him. They start picking on him, they make fun of him. Now, all of these being picked on and made fun of is put right on top of the survival system. That means it's a creative force. And this creative force may pick up ideas that school is bad or people are bad. And next thing you know, little John's got panic attacks and anxieties at home. They go, what's wrong with Johnny, little John, you know?
Or I'm bad. He can learn I'm bad from that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you pick up an idea that you're bad based on what has occurred in your life. So who are you really? You're a creative force. The problem is that this creative force, this survival system, who you really are, is a successful creator and manifester. That includes depression as a success. That includes anger and pissed offness as a success. Financial abundance or financial nothingness is a success based on whatever trainings and emotional conditions that was put on and experiences onto the survival source. So who are you really? You're a dynamic person who's always creating and manifesting. The deal is what is layered on top of this, and the filters and the experiences will create something good or bad. And it's only good or bad by those who judge it bad or good. Because to the brain, depression is a good thing based on its references. Now, consciously, we walk around and go, you know, I really don't like feeling like I'm a miserable piece of sap, you know? I don't like that. I want to be happy. Well, the problem is consciousness is usually pretty ignorant about the unconsciousness, which is your limbic operating system. The limbic operating system takes all this information in, organizes it, and produces whatever it is it produces. Now, again, to the brain, there's no judgment, bad or good. It just is what it is.
Right, to the subconscious part of the brain. Yep.
Yeah, to the subconscious, unconscious limbic operating system. But to us consciously, we go to church, and the church says, well, the cause of all your problems is a woman, a snake, and an apple, and an innocent man. And you have a dark mark on your soul.
Innocent man?
Well, that's what they usually are.
Yeah.
But the point is, they're going to say the reason why you're broken is something dark is bad is inside you. There's a dark mark on your soul. But they're not saying, well, the reason why you're bad is because all the beatings and the sexual, physical, emotional abuses your brother put you through or your uncle put you through. They just say, what's wrong with you? Just confess. Mm-hmm. Give your heart to Jesus, or give your heart to Mickey Mouse, or just change your ways. It sounds easy consciously just to say, okay, I'll do that. But the problem is, what is stacked upon the creative force?
Most of the stuff we don't know about.
Well, either we don't know about it, we forgot, or we don't want to know, or we actually
or we don't want to bring it up. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because these are all programmings from our life experiences. So again, in my world, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just successfully producing something. If you don't like what you're producing, you have to change the ingredients within the self. You know, if I'm going to make a cake, you know, if I want to make a cake, you got to have flour, you got to have eggs, you got to have oil, you got to have maybe a little bit of butter, maybe a little bit of sugar, right? And you have to do it in a specific way. You can't put flour, you can't use dirt instead of flour, you can't use salt instead of sugar, because if you do, you're going to create a product, but it may not taste so good, it may not look so good. But both of them are a creation. Mm-hmm. Now, if you don't, again, who are you? You're a dynamic force, always creating and manifesting. The biggest problem, as you know, and I know, before you found, Utaptics, FasterEFT, my trainings, is how to undo this, how to change this.
Yeah. Yes. So, right. We didn't really introduce too much of ourselves. So I'm Tammy Magnuson, Sir Robert Smith. And I was introduced to your work in 2000, must have been around 2011. And I was going through a depression. And I thought, what's wrong with me? But what I thought was, well, it's the court custody. It's him trying to take the kids. It's the kids crying all the time. It's all this sadness and things like that going on. So it was interesting to see, like, what am I doing inside my own head to cause these physical problems? So talk to us a little bit about how these traumas or these things that are stuck on top of our survival system literally can shut us down and make us sick.
Well, just again, some of your languaging I would definitely change. Laid on top of the creative force. It's not stuck. It's not real. It's not permanent.
Laid on top. Okay.
It's laid there.
Yep.
And it is a production. So again, as we've talked about this before publicly, you've been through some pretty tough stuff. Now, again, when these tough things happen, what do you do with it at the time? Since you had this many skills to handling it, guess what happens? Your husband, your mother, your brother, whoever it is, they impact you. This great brain will pull it in, spread it through the cortices, mix it together, and start producing depression, anger, sadness, frustration. And that is a success. That's not a failure. Because
according to my survival system,
to the brain, but you don't like that success.
No.
Nor did you like the idea of your husband beating you up, or I'm making this up, abusing you. Nor did you like the idea that you're being made fun of at school. Nor did you like the idea that you feel like your mother, your father liked your sister better than you. I'm making all this up. So again, but these happen, and they're laid upon your creative force, which becomes a filter in how you're going to perceive the world and how you're going to act. Successfully so. So in my world, what I say, problems are undesirable, successful outcomes. All right. And so in order to create a new outcome, you've got to change the layers that are laid upon your creative force. And that's where neuroplasticity, memory reconsolidation, knowing how to update, change those layers to where you can produce something different.
Right.
And that's
so those layers would be considered trauma, pains, stress. If they're producing something we don't want, right? Trauma, stress, pain, anguish. Right. Okay.
Well, again, I mean, you're using certain words, anger, trauma, anguish. These are side effects to memory references. The memories and the emotions attached to it creates those. So again, what is a trauma? Well, in my world, a trauma is just an emotional education on how to survive. There's some big traumas, for a little girl or a little boy, going to school is a traumatic experience. They're so scared, they're leaving their comfort of their own home.
Right.
And they're going to be with strangers, and teachers intimidate them and scare them with fear of public speaking, with being quiet, intimidation to keep you quiet. So these are traumas, but in reality, they're not really traumas. They're just emotional education that impact all decisions from that point forward, or a lot of decisions. Mm-hmm. So again, trauma is a strong emotional education. Now, as you know, my name is Robert Jean. I'm an expert at creating great shifts in the mind in a very quick way. And again, working with people in drug rehabs, the severest traumas, murders, deaths, addictions, fears, phobias of the worst kind. And when I'm done, when we finish the memory is not traumatic. It's actually been updated, which that layer is now lifted. It reminds me, I was in drug rehab working on Joshua. And Joshua, he was in Afghanistan. He's in the military. He's a good guy, but he witnessed some things he wish he hadn't been witnessed. And so now he's in drug rehab because he chose drugs to try to numb out, to escape the traumas in his head. And so, he came in to do a session with me, and I have him write a list of things, and he couldn't do a list.
This is a good example of the survival system finding something to help it
escape and deal with it.
Cope with the, okay.
So that, again, our brain has natural survival systems built inside of us. And one of them is escaping from the feelings and doing something else. Drug, sex, alcohol, shopping, cleaning, fooding, whatever it is that you do, try to avoid your feelings because it's inside. So here it is, Joshua, I'm getting ready to work on him. He says, man, I've never told anybody this stuff. And I said, well, just to build trust with you, won't you pick a memory, a bad memory? Do not say anything what it is. I'll walk you through some exercises so we can update this memory to where it can't bother you in less than 3 to 5 minutes. Now, this is a big one. And he said, it doesn't bother me inside me because I removed some of the layers that had the emotional feelings and the images, etc., and they were fading. And so therefore he felt differently. And I said, look, we did one, you didn't share what it is. Let's write a list. So I worked with him for 2 hours, cleaned up things. And the next day he said, I slept all night. I normally wake up every 3 hours. I wake up 6-7 times a night. I slept all night. He says, but I still feel a little anxious when I'm out there smoking in the yard. And I began to explain to him how the brain works. I said, well, this is what happens. And this is, by the way, all of us, we're very simple minded. How the brain works is like feed the dog, ring the bell, feed the dog, call his name, feed the dog, call his name. Next thing you know, you call his name, he comes to you. All right. Right. So I said, well, this is what happens. Sometimes, you know, you could be experiencing something and something else happens and they're linked together and they act together. He goes, I know what it is. I said, what is it? He goes, well, you know, I'm in Afghanistan. It's at night. Me and my buddy are smoking cigarettes, leaning against the Humvee. And I look up to the sky and I see tracer rounds coming right at us. So they jump under the Humvee and they hear ding, 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 all the bullets hitting the Humvee. So his brain linked smoking out there, something bad's going to happen. Now, this is a layer on top of the creative force. So for him to be anxious out there in the yard is not a bad thing based on the layer on top of the brain, you know, on top of what his creative force. So it was a success, but he didn't like it, but not realizing that the survival brain is kind of keep him safe based on an emotional experience, which would be called a trauma, by the way.
Right. And what you're describing is that his survival brain said, you're going to get killed, go hide. The brain linked the fear and anxiety to the cigarette. And now later, years later, he's anxious around a cigarette.
So he's been emotionally conditioned, something bad's going to happen when he's smoking.
Yeah.
That's
so
simple.
He's looking all over, wondering where's it going to come from.
He thinks there's something wrong with him.
And it's not.
No.
It's just the trigger of the old memory.
It's a programming that is trying to keep him alive. And by the way, at that time, like all of us who's listening to me, if you don't have any skills to deal with the things happen right now, your brain's going to bring it in, it's going to organize it, it's going to produce from it without you consciously aware of it, because consciously we're not that smart. Unconscious does everything for us for our benefit based on the environment in which you came from. That means the crazy stuff and the good stuff. If you come from a family environment that's kind of crazy, you're going to have a tendency to think the world is too. And that's not a failure. It's just programming. Now, what we want to do is consciously aware, wise people who want to have a better way of life, you must learn how to change the programming within. If you don't change the program within, you're going to repeat the same cycle until you die.
Yeah.
And that's
so
not
those layers. Those layers can be changed.
Oh, yeah, adjustable, yes.
And they're adjustable, which many people are trying to cover it up, trying to use techniques that will release some pressure or give them some relief. But to actually resolve it, we've got to go back to the incidences that created that layer that we're seeing the world through. That creates a perspective and a focus, right?
Well, there is a variable I want to throw in there. You don't have to go back to the original memory, because sometimes you consciously don't know the memory, but you got to be aware of the program and the programming that creates it. Like if somebody says, you know, like for example, you know, the guy's had smoking and he's having anxiety. He had no reason why.
Right.
He had no idea why.
I've had that happen, and it's awesome to find the answer. And be like, oh, it makes so much sense now. I'm not, you know, psychic or psycho crazy.
But just to say, the second part of that, even if you know why, it doesn't necessarily get rid of the the emotional responses, because the knowing why doesn't fix it. You have to neurologically update the references inside yourself, which is the memories. Again,
and knowing why could make it worse, right?
Oh, you could build a bigger problem and build on top of it as well. By the way, that is a success too. It's like the young lady who had an incident on the road outside of her flat, which is like an apartment. Well, the problem is that it happened, yes, but what she did is she started grooming that event. She asked you what you call very intelligent questions. What happens if it happens again? What if it's worse? And so then she created a scenario inside of herself, which is a success. She got so scared, she is even afraid to leave, go downstairs to the shop to buy groceries. And then she escalated it even more so by creating a fear to even going to her own bathroom. Now, this is not a failure. This is a grooming and a perfection using that creative force to manifest something. But what happened is she had experiences, and then by consciousness, ignorant consciousness, she started creating a new problem and then expanded it and make it even worse.
Yeah.
So again, who are you? You're a dynamic force, always creating and manifesting. Now, what dictates what you manifest and create are the emotional and experiences and the levels of different things that occurred. Now, that's the good stuff too. It's the bad stuff. To the brain, bad is not bad and good is not good. It's just a production. That's it. Consciousness says, oh, I don't like this. Interesting.
So a strong emotional, what did you call it, trauma?
It's just a strong emotional education or an impact. It's changing how you perceive the world. Now, again, of course, working with individuals with the severe stuff. I mean, the worst ever, whether witnessing people destroyed in front of you or being raped or sexually abused or beaten or humiliated in public, all of these are trainings on how to survive the world based on what you've experienced.
Right.
And again, triggers, sound, smells, and all this triggers this survival system, brings it to the surface, and you respond to it as if it's real today. And it is real because your brain brings it to fruition, to the top. If you don't like what you're experiencing, you got to change those references.
Yes, the references are the layers.
Layers.
And I did hear somebody talk about how, one person can have the same incident happen, but they respond a different way than someone else that has something happen. And you talked about these responses and how it triggers that reaction. So what makes the difference?
Well, again, it's like are you a hula dancer? Do you do hula dancing at all?
I did it once in Hawaii. That's it.
So it's not like you go to hula dancing university.
No.
Well, the difference in a person who is a great hula dancer is what you call a lot of experiences, a lot of practices. Now, a lot of people will say it's complex PTSD, and I will say it's compounded PTSD. You got a child who's had a traumatic life experiences. This child begins to focus, compound, expect, amplify, and it just gets bigger and bigger because they're perfecting this art of anxiety. Again, it's not a failure, but again, can it be undone? Of course. But if you go to people who don't know how to change memories, they only know how to diagnose, give you a label, give you some pills, they can't change something if they don't know what it is that they're trying to change. If it's unethical to change memories, guess what they won't do is change memories or update memories. And so the difference between two people having the same experiences are internal references and focus, what they choose to focus on and how they amplify it internally.
Yeah.
And that's
internal references. Yeah. So as we think about this, people that have anger problems, alcohol problems, yelling problems, whatever, what we might think is it's them making us do this. It's actually an internal reference. And do all of these references go back to childhood? No,
they go back last week. Because see, the brain operates from imprints to imprints. Now, if you don't know what an imprint is, of course, a psychologist will say you're imprinted the first 7 years of your life. That's not absolutely true. You are imprinted 7 years plus however many other years you live. However old you are, you have a lot of imprints, and these imprints dictate how you are to behave. based on the situation at the time. Like for example, an imprint is like, I'm talking to, Eugene, and I said, my mother had died, and he got really sad. I say, what's going on, Eugene? He says, I just got really sad when you said that. And I said, well, what are you doing inside yourself? He says, well, I'm in the hospital in my mind, and I can see my mother dead on the hospital bed with tubes down her throat. Now, again, that is the last time he basically saw her. Now, that become an emotional imprint. Now, that's not the only memory he has. He has hundreds, if not thousands more, but this becomes an emotional imprint that dictates how he is to perform from this point forward, unless somebody intelligent like me helps him to release the feelings, release the emotions, and update that memory to where it's peaceful. And then when he thinks of mom, he gets a smile on his face and feel the lips of her mother kissing him and saying, I love you. Now, again, I love you, and the kiss on his cheek was still there in his brain, but it wasn't important. The most important one was the last one. So we are always
survival.
Yeah, it's a survival system.
Right.
And so anytime someone says mom, he goes to a sad spot. Well, that's because that's the last imprint inside of his mind.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the difference between two responses. You can have twins and they act totally different to different situations. Identical twins,
Right. Same family, same dynamic, same everything, and have total difference. Right. All right. So who are we?
So then who are we now? You are a dynamic force, always creating and always manifesting. And what you create and manifest is based on what the layers you have on top of it and the focus.
And how does that help us? I'm just thinking right now, like in regular life, how does that help us to know that about other people as we go through life and we want to be judgmental or be some of these things that that we become? How does this help us, this understanding?
Yeah. I mean, it's like there's a saying that says you really won't know a person unless you walk in their moccasins a mile. When you look at people, you have to understand people are successfully producing things based on references. If you don't understand that they have references that are different than yours, you may have a tendency to judge them and condemn them. And that's not very nice.
Not nice to yourself either.
No, we do it to ourselves as well. So again, the key is having an understanding that we're doing the best we can based on our references. If you don't like what you're doing, learn how to change the references. By the way, the most important real estate you could ever own is not in Florida. It's not anywhere else. It's the one right between your ears. Because to be honest with you, happiness and joy, miserable and sadness lays on this field between your ears. It's because of the seeds that were planted from your past experiences. And if you don't like what you're producing, pull the roots up, update them, replant things, and have a better way of life. Because if you must own your head. If you don't own your head, what is in there will own you. That's the good, the bad, or the ugly. Neuroplasticity 101, discovering the art of changing thyself from within the self. So who are you? You're a dynamic force, is always creating and manifesting. I mean, granted, you may have a driver's license, it has your name there, or a birth. That's just a label. But who you really are is you're a creator and a manifester. And if you're creating something you don't like, learn how to create something different by updating the self. Mm-hmm. And of course, Utaptic's FasterEFT is what I teach. Mm-hmm. You can learn to own yourself and create a life beyond measure. I mean, Tammy, your life does represent that. Before you started, you remember you had knee pain. You had all kinds of stuff. You were not a very happy camper. But Tammy today is a total different person than what we started with.
Yes. And the relief and the gratitude you feel when you understand, like, oh, there is something I can do about that, is such a reward. Like, to feel the victim of whatever life circumstances bring to you is hopeless, right? Hopeless and helpless. But to have the understanding that, oh, there's something that created this, and I can be empowered to not only figure it out, or to, if I can't figure it out, to change it, to update it.
Yeah, I mean, there are several people who can have the same bad experience, and the difference is that makes a difference in each person is how they process that experience and what they do with it at the time. If you push it away and ignore it, it's a lot easier than if you replay it and rehearse it. You know, it reminds me of these two sisters who were kidnapped, raped, and thought killed. One sister remembered everything and she's in a mental institution. The other sister didn't remember anything and she's not in a mental institution.
Wow.
That doesn't mean the memories aren't there. They will boil out eventually in different parts of their life. But both of these are changeable if you have, I mean, a practitioner like me, or, you know, or like you're a trained practitioner. You can help people change these things. And we've been doing it for quite some time. So there are different ways that people process. But again, who are you? You're a dynamic force, always creating and manifesting. It's a survival system based on your environment, where you come from and what you've been exposed to. So that's who you are.
Yeah.
If you don't like what you're producing, learn how to do something different.
And blaming the environment isn't the answer.
No, it's victim model thinking.
Yeah.
And yet they're all in your head. All the memories and all the references are in your head. And you could do it. You could do it under your bed. You could do it in the attic. You could do it under the sea, because it's all within thee. Change what you have within.
Excellent.
Good job, huh? Was this a good one?
Yeah, very good.
All right.
Informative. I think it'll be enlightening for people that are having deeper questions on it.
So guys, won't you come in, check out, FasterEFT.com. Tammy, she's a practitioner as well. She's on the practitioner list. And learn how to change yourself. Learn how to like yourself. Learn how to be kind within yourself. Because what you do up here, you do to other people. So be nice to you first, and then share that with others. Thank you, Tammy.
You bet.